And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you're wearing a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific grows with branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña is taking your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair. Mescla is ready to serve you and your family for your dine-in experience and takeout services. To ensure everyone's safety and comfort, Team Mescla has taken further steps in maintaining a clean and sanitized area for you and your family while dining in. For more information, please call 479-2652 or 479-2653. Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Add Minnesota to the list of states where wearing a mask in public is about to become mandatory.
The order will take effect this coming Saturday. Governor Walz was waiting to get state Republican legislators on board. However, they did not act during a special legislative session. Walz pointed to science showing that masks slow COVID spread. He also said,
"This is the way, the cheapest, the most effective way for us to open up our businesses, for us to get our kids back in school, for us to keep our grandparents healthy."
Kids under 5 and adults with medical or other conditions that make mask wearing difficult are exempt. Now more than half the states have face covering requirements. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
The state of Minnesota also saying former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin owes the state thousands of dollars in unpaid taxes, charging he and his wife with grossly underreporting their income. The feds say it was a hate crime when a suburban Denver man ran over a liquor store owner because he is a Sikh.
Eric Bremen already faced more than a dozen charges, including attempted murder, assault, and harassment for the April 29th incident that put Lakwant Singh in the hospital for more than 2 months. Prosecutors adding the hate crime charge Tuesday after investigators interviewed the victim in person with help from the FBI. The Sikh coalition, which represents Singh, claims Bremen told Singh and his wife to go back to their country and damaged several items in the couple's liquor store. According to a police document, Bremen thought Singh, who wears a turban and an uncut beard as a representation of his faith, was an older Arab, and says Singh jumped in front of his car as he was driving away from the store. A regular customer contradicted that, telling police he saw a man Singh was arguing with get in his car and plow into Singh. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
Red China reaching for the red planet, launching a space mission hoping to land a rover on Mars. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont or call 646-1463.
At the mall, as you enjoy shopping, dining, or entertainment, you could also win 3 great cars from Atkins Kroll and thousands of prizes in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game. Present your mall receipts and have a chance to win the 3rd car, the head-turning Lexus ES350 Luxury. Getaways to Manila, courtesy of Philippine Airlines. Plus, prizes from Foot Locker and Burger King. Virtual drawing date 10 a.m. August 22nd. Watch live on Micronesia Mall Facebook. Play and win in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game.
Hafide, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is also brought to you by Security Title, when you absolutely need confidentiality in your real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Yeah, so another day on Tall Tales, another reading of the Second Amendment. Correct, Real Joe Cruz?
You all right, sir?
Yeah.
You kind of read that with a little more moxie than you usually do. You came a little harder.
Moxie is my middle name, Real Joe Cruz.
I thought it was danger.
Depends on the day. Depends on the day of the week.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so you detected a little more moxie there. Right?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, I guess that's your job. Call them as you see them.
Yes, sir.
So, starting the program with the Second Amendment tips off the international radio listening audience that Tall Tales is a Constitution-oriented international radio talk show that encourages audience participation, talks about constitutional and statutory issues, politics, etc., from a conservative, kind of leaning towards a libertarian point of view. So if that's where your head is at, you'll feel very comfortable at Tall Tales. If it's not where your head is at, you must be terribly uncomfortable right now. So you've come to the right place to improve on your comfort level. Going to start out here with Zemi Kutney, of course. And here we go, Zemi Kutney, where I look at the editorial pages of each of our daily newspapers, choose which of the two editorials dealing with local subjects is the better, and award it the coveted Blue Star. Almost every day of the year, that turns out to be the Post, because the Daily News doesn't think it has to run local editorials. They run boilerplate from USA Today and Gannett News Service instead. So they're very seldom in the running for the Blue Star. Now, today is no different. Today, their editorial is titled Sweden's Coven Experiment. Don't do what we did. And it's from 25 Swedish doctors and scientists. And the list of doctors and scientists is about 25% as long as the entire editorial, and probably makes as much sense. So I won't go into the content of the editorial. I will just make this comment on Sweden, though, and that is, in Sweden, the government didn't need to come down with draconian rules about social distancing. You want to know why, Real Joe Cruz?
I do, sir.
They're all Swedes. All right, let's go to the Post. And here's what the Post says today. AG is right. Settlement deals involving public money should not be secret. And the public scored Wednesday on the government transparency front. Government, as you were Guam Attorney General, leaving on a jet plane, and a legal opinion stated out-of-court settlement deals involving a government of Guam entity should not be kept secret unless Guam law specifically exempts public disclosure. The opinion was issued by Public Auditor Benjamin Cruz's request for settlement agreements involving fired and then rehired Port of Guam employees and managers, also known as the Port 7. A quote, unless an express exemption under 5 GCA section 10108 applies, out-of-court settlement agreements before the courts or the Civil Service Commission are public records subject to inspection, the local attorney general stated. Settlement deals before the Civil Service Commission will also help shine a light on sometimes murky government actions when it comes to agreements with employees who have been served adverse actions. We perceive no, another quote, we perceive no difference between settlement agreements entered into as a result of awards by the CSC or as a consequence of pending or threatened litigation in the courts. For purposes of deciding whether they are public records subject to your disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act or the Sunshine Law, they are the same, the Attorney General stated. The Post has previously sought port settlement agreements involving the fired and rehired employees and managers who were awarded back pay. The Post's request was previously denied on the basis of the port's claim that the settlement agreements are related to ongoing legal matters. So in other words, and I did this too, I sent a Sunshine Act request for one that settled, I think it must have been February or so, and the response I got back is no, because the information contained in that settlement agreement would have a relationship to pending cases. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. The port's request was previously denied on the basis of the port's claim that the settlement agreements are related to ongoing legal matters. After the Attorney General opinion was released, now, are you familiar with the phrase sour grapes, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what sour grapes mean? Can you tell the folks, the fans out there, what sour grapes means?
I don't think I could explain it as good as you, sir. I'd get lost in it.
Can't do it as well as I can.
For sure.
Yeah. Flattery will get you everywhere with me, Real Joe Cruz. Yeah, sour grapes means complaining about something that should have gone your way but didn't.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, we'd have won the we'd have beat Delavan last night, except those darn refs are so crooked. You know, they ought to play 3 blind mice during the halftime for those guys. Wait, little sour grapes there, Bob? Well, yeah, okay.
I got it.
All right. Now there's an opposite to sour grapes. It's called sweet lemons.
Really?
Yeah, sweet lemons. I'm not going to ask you to explain sweet lemons.
Yeah, I couldn't.
Yeah. Sweet lemons is exactly the opposite. Well, yeah, Delavan beat us last night, but, you know, it's okay because that means we don't have to go to the tournament. And I don't like to go on those long drives to Beloit. So it's all right. In other words, taking something that is really not very favorable and trying to convince everyone, including yourself, well, that's really the way I wanted it to come out. Okay. After the Attorney General opinion was released, Port General Manager Rory Respicio stated he has previously advocated for the release of the settlement agreements. I didn't agree with Port Counsel's opinion and asked the OPA to reconcile this with the AG, Respicio stated. And I just happen to have I thought I had a press release from Rory Respicio calling it really good news that information was released. Now, remember, this is the same Rory Respicio that is in a little bit of a snit with Tom Fisher. Tom Fisher asked for procurement documents concerning hiring legal counsel. You remember that? And Rory said, Attorney Fisher's office was sent the email within 4 days prescribed by law. I wish Attorney Fisher would have just called the Port Authority instead of going through this extreme measure involving the courts. So after it's decided that Rory doesn't have any choice but to disclose the papers, hey, right on. let's take a victory lap, he says. Excuse me. The Attorney General's legal opinion states a related legal case isn't enough to keep the public in the dark on settlement agreements for court cases, and so on. So this opinion bolsters efforts by the public to hold public officials accountable for their decisions. When certain deals are not shielded by secrecy, public officials will hopefully be more mindful that their actions, though initially shielded in secrecy, will become public. I wonder if it's possible for the editorial writers over at the Post to write an editorial without misusing the word hopefully. I explained hopefully to them that hopefully is an adverb. Wow. Okay, well, still, they're right on the money this time. So the coveted Blue Star goes to the Post again. That brings the Post up to 211 Blue Stars compared to 57 for the Daily News. And I have a special treat for you today. I stumbled across some aphorisms on the internet that I thought I would share with you. An aphorism is a short, pithy utterance that makes an interesting point in a sort of ironic fashion. Starting out with, it's not whether you win or lose, but how you place the blame. And then we have enough youth. How about a fountain of smart? And then a fool and his money can throw one heck of a party. How about this one I really like? This is kind of an old-time joke that's really politically incorrect. It's a blonde joke. So I'm going to tell it at the risk of having a lynch mob waiting outside for me when the show is over at 1800. Real Joe Cruz, did you hear about the blonde who went up to the circulation in the desk in the library? And when the lady behind the desk says, "Yes, ma'am, may I help you?" The blonde said, "I'd like a Big Mac and fries and a big Coke."
No, I never heard of that.
So the librarian, she says, "Ma'am, this is the library." And the blonde said, "Oh, sorry, I'd like a Big Mac."
I get it, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the question. You know, the old saying is blondes have more fun, right? When blondes have more fun, do they know it? Okay. Money isn't everything, but it sure keeps the kids in touch. If at first you don't succeed, skydiving's not for you. Here we go again. We are born naked, wet, and hungry. Then things get worse. How about this one? Red meat is not bad for you. Fuzzy green meat is bad for you. And 99% of all lawyers give the rest a bad name. I hope that Dr. Tom Toole is listening. He likes lawyer jokes, right? Okay, you know what a Wurlitzer is, Real Joe Cruz?
No, sir.
You know what a jukebox is?
I do.
Yeah. Well, Wurlitzer was one of the leading brands of jukeboxes back in the day.
Oh, okay.
When every little restaurant like Linda's would have a jukebox in the corner, right?
A diner jukebox.
Yeah. So here it goes. Xerox and Wurlitzer will merge to produce reproductive organs. Yeah. You know where L.A. is, real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir, in California?
No, L.A. actually stands for Lower Alabama.
Oh. Really?
If you're a redneck.
Okay.
Yeah. So here's the Alabama state motto. At least we're not Mississippi. So you drive into Alabama coming from the west, and there's a sign right there in the state line. Welcome to Alabama. At least we ain't Mississippi. And then artificial intelligence is no match for natural stupidity. How about this one? The latest survey shows that 3 out of 4 people make up 75% of the population. You got to get your calculator out to work on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last one, stock car racing. We don't do stock car racing on Guam. We did once upon a time, kind of, down at the Calvo's track down at Apra Heights.
Yeah.
Yeah. But stock car racing is big in the United States. You can watch it on TV, NASCAR and all that kind of stuff, right? So here it is. I think congressmen should wear uniforms, like NASCAR drivers, so we could identify their corporate sponsors. So much for aphorisms. Let's go from there to the cart. And let's see what I've got on the card for today. I've got the big three, of course, Troy. Troy versus Janela. It's been 64 days since the Paco paper exonerated Janela from having to make any kind of an apology, but promising that she would not Janela anyone in the future. So it's been 64 days and Janela has not Janela'd anybody. And we have Tina versus the emergency. It's good news. I mean, we should all feel a little safer because it's been 17 days since Tina detected anything that was a danger to the health or safety of the people of Guam, sufficient to prompt her to call an emergency session of the legislature and waive public hearing requirements for any bill that might come before that august body. And then we have Luis Muñoz versus unemployment, and there's some new news on this one. You recall Luis Muñoz applied for unemployment insurance, and it turned out later on that Louise was not eligible because she was making over $55,000 a year at her employment, which is as a senator. And Louise defended by saying, well, I lost a couple of gig jobs, and I didn't know that I had to include my senatorial salary, too. So it was a mistake. But you remember what kind of a mistake it was, real Joe Cruz?
It was genuine, sir.
A genuine mistake. So there's an article in the Post today. FBI works with Guam labor to fight fraudulent unemployment claims. Oh, I'd like to have been a fly in the wall in Luis Muñoz's office when she read this one. The true victims of these fraud crimes are unemployed citizens who are relying on these benefits to feed their families, stated Honolulu Special Agent in Charge Eli S. Miranda in a press release. The FBI will continue working with government and law enforcement partners to stop those who illegally profit on the backs of taxpayers. Take special notice that if you apply for unemployment and you're not eligible, you may have a problem with the FBI. Miranda said. He went on to relate that if a mistake is made, the FBI will examine the papers and determine if the mistake is genuine. If it is, the FBI won't seek prosecution. Yeah, I just made that up, real Joe Cruz. All right. So, let's see. I guess Monday I did hagiography versus reality. Sort of puncturing the myth of the greatness of Pika Feyaran. And BJ versus the Post. And I spent a lot of time describing our relatively new president of the university, and allowing all of our international radio listening audience to take some comfort from the fact that we now know that he's woke, that he signs up for the identity politics just like all of the people that went down and knelt for Black Lives Matter down at the Skinner Plaza. And I also spent some time on Neil Weir versus Guam. Equally American seeks hearings on rights of territories. Neil Weir was really trumpeting the fact that he is going to try to go to this organization called the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights and talk about the denial of the right to political participation for the nearly 5 million Americans living in D.C. and the U.S. territories. So I think I pretty thoroughly rebutted that. And the next item on the card is something that Ray surfaced yesterday morning. It's an article that came from Getty News Service. It says, in the debate over statehood for Washington, D.C., we also need to consider representation for U.S. territories. Representation is fundamental to just governance, and it's by a guy named John Caves III. I wonder if John Caves III would consent to serve on the board of directors down at the port.
Sounds like a spelunker to me, sir.
He does. I think he could cave in right along with the rest of them.
Sure.
Okay, so this is what Mr. Cave says. At the end of June, the House of Representatives passed a bill to make Washington, D.C. the 51st state. And I already explained to you why that is a really dumb idea, so I won't go into it again. It was the latest attempt to remedy a centuries-old problem that the district's residents have no voting representation in Congress. The bill is unlikely to even be considered by the Senate. Well, I hope so. Making it a dead letter for the rest of this year. Now, we're going to get into something that's precatory here, Real Joe Cruz. What does that mean, precatory?
Argumentative?
Something that you hope will happen, Real Joe Cruz.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. So the Senate won't even consider that bill, but it can be seen as a statement of intent and could return to relevance if Democrats gain control of both houses of Congress in November. What a horrifying thought that is. If that happens, the new Congress ought to spare a thought for the territories. Washington, D.C. has roughly 700,000 residents in comparison to more than 3 million of our fellow Americans reside in 5 inhabited U.S. territories: Puerto Rico, Guam, the Northern Mariana Islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and American Samoa. Most of those territories have been joined to the United States for a century or more. except for the Northern Marianas. It was just in the mid-'70s that the Northern Marianas came along. And the Virgin Islands was 1917. All people born on their soil, except in American Samoa, are U.S. citizens. Yet, like Washington, but of course, Neil Weir got the circuit court for the 10th Circuit to rule that people born in American Samoa are American citizens. The trial judge in that case stayed its application pending appeal. Going on. Yet, like Washington, D.C., their congressional representatives cannot vote on bills beyond the committee level. Unlike Washington, D.C., they are located far from the center of our political life, largely out of sight and out of mind. Representation, as all Americans know, is fundamental to just governance. It is what enables the people to consent to the laws that govern them. In the words of John Locke, whose thought inspired our Union founders, whenever the people shall choose their representatives upon just and undeniable equal measures suitable to the original frame of the government, it cannot be doubted to be the will and act of the society. Or, as the forerunners of the American Revolution said to the British Parliament, no taxation without representation. Except that guy in the back who's thinking about the U.S. territories who said, yeah, and no representation without taxation either, like in the territories. All right, let's take a short break here.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties, doing real estate since 1978. 14 years right here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Now, in the District of Columbia, which has a non-voting delegate to Congress, the legend on the license plate says, no taxation without representation, going back to that historic battle cry from the Revolutionary War. But some of their rap consists of saying, just give us as good a deal as the territories have. And what that means is, if our delegate can't vote in Congress, then we should be able to keep all of the income tax paid in the district, which is the deal we have here. We have a representative in Congress, but we don't pay U.S. income tax. What looks like U.S. income tax stays right here on the island for our local legislature to squander. I mean, appropriate. My bad, Real Joe Cruz.
It's all right, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So, back to the article here. Or, as the forerunners of the American Revolution said to the British Parliament, no taxation without representation. Now, this very scholarly gentleman, Mr. Caves, goes on to say, residents of the United States are governed by U.S. law, pay U.S. tax. No, residents of the territories do not pay U.S. tax. So, if you can make a whopper of a mistake like that, what does that do to the credibility of the rest of your piece? You're just putting words on paper without really thinking about what you're doing or doing any research at all. And then he says, contribute recruits the U.S. military, disproportionately in the case of American Samoa. Now, you hear that all the time. And, Guam has always had, at one time, back during the time that we had selective service or the draft, a person could go down to the draft board and volunteer for the draft, which means he would be selected and be sent off ordinarily to the Army. And there were times that so many people volunteered for the draft that no one got actually drafted on Guam because so many young folks entered the military. Was this an act of disinterested patriotism? Maybe a little bit. Was it the chance to travel and embark on adventure? Yeah. Was it a chance to get off a very small island way out in the middle of the ocean? Yeah. Was it a chance to begin a career that you might not be able to begin on Guam? Yeah. Does that explain why a lot of people from Guam joined the military over the years? Does it explain why one of the important items in the compact of free association between the three freely associated states in the United States is that citizens of the freely associated states can enlist in the United States Armed Forces? They're not citizens, but they can enlist. Does that help you understand why, up until the closure of Subic Bay, the United States enlisted 2,500 Filipino citizens every year? And they came to Subic Bay and enlisted. And it was a very selective process because it was a much sought-after prize. So to tie the fact that a lot of people enlist in the armed forces, to try to connect that somehow to the right to vote, it doesn't work. There's no real connection there. As a matter of fact, you could look at probably some Northeast state that had the highest number of people that evaded the draft, and they still get their representation in Congress. Okay, so not even up to halftime, and I got our Carl already. Good afternoon, our Carl.
Hey, Bob. Good afternoon. Yeah, I'd just like to add in my boy's story to this, our high per capita enlistment figures. Actually, a couple of stories. One of them was one of my best friends from middle school. When he was 20 years old, he passed out over 30 applications around the island. The best response he got was for security guard. So being the bright and driven guy that he was a Chamorro. He knew that was not what he wanted to do with his life. Not to put security guards down, but that he had higher goals. So he enlisted in the Air Force. He stayed in for 30 years. He rose to Chief Master Sergeant. He got 2 master's degrees, 2 bachelor's degrees, and 3 associate's degrees. This guy was driven, and he traveled around the world. After he retired, he left and he enlisted. He went into the federal government, starting as a GS-12. He's got a great life, nice house in Texas, and it's worked out well for him. My son in late 2017 came home one evening and he said he was a waiter at one of the local hotels, and he said he was feeling trapped. He came home and he said, "Dad, I'm thinking of joining the military." He wanted to jumpstart his career.
I thought you said he joined the Air Force.
Yes, he did.
Go on, Carl.
So he joined, and his first assignment was in the UK. He's gotten to see Rome, Paris, Prague, Spain, Portugal, Ireland, Scotland, London. He's been all over, and that's what I wanted him to do. He's had 5 months of tech school training. To me, my son has had the best end of the deal. He's a gym rat, and he's got access to a great gym. He has been deployed one time to the UAE, and one time he didn't tell me to Saudi Arabia when the things were heating up with Iran, which I'm glad he didn't tell me because I would have been worried. But my point is that on his list of important reasons for joining the military, patriotism was probably dead last. And it's understandable. You know, he's gotten the best end of the deal. He's gotten to travel. He's gotten a lot of technical training. He's been exposed to a lot of new fields, and that's what I wanted him to do. I wanted him to get out, see the world. I didn't want to see him for several years. I said, get out, see the world, expand your mind, and that's what he's done.
So there are lots of reasons for joining the military other than patriotism, right, Real Joe Cruz? I mean, right, R. Carl?
Yeah, and I can't speak for anybody else. You know, I'm sure there are, Chamorros and other local residents who joined, and patriotism was higher up the list. You know, maybe number one. You know, I don't know, but I can't speak for two people who did join, and patriotism was not exactly their top choice, and understandably, you know, it just represented a way to jumpstart their lives and their careers, and it's worked out fantastically well for both of them. So anyway, I just wanted to add in those two stories to kind of give things from a different point of view.
When I was a youngster, there was a saying that young eagles should roost far from home. And that, as in the novels of old, a young man should leave home and go out and seek his fortune. I think that probably plays into it, too. But thanks for your insight, R. Carl.
Yeah, just one final comment. You know, I never told my son what to do. I wanted him to find his own way. But when he came home that evening and told me he was thinking of joining the military, I instantly steered him in the direction of the Air Force, primarily because they are reputed to spend quite a bit of money on developing their people and their lifestyle. You know, I mean, Air Force gets a lot of teasing for having, having kind of cushy life compared to like the Marines or the Army, you know. So that's what I wanted him to do. I wanted him to go in for training. Anyway, Bob, thank you very much for allowing me to chime in. I do appreciate it.
All right, R. Carl. Nice talking to you again. So this last sentence here. Residents of the territory are governed by U.S. law. True. Pay U.S. tax. Wrong. Contribute recruits to the U.S. military. So what? They ought, therefore, to have a say in the federal legislature. I just don't see the logic. That's an illogical. It's not only wrong, but illogical. All right, going back into that article. Expect that they might someday seek independence. Under such circumstances, there would be no convincing moral justification for denying it to them. Okay? After all, the United States first acquired the territories through conquest or purchase, which are insufficient to earn a people's lasting allegiance. How else does a country acquire territory but through conquest or purchase? Although they have occasionally consented to remain under U.S. jurisdiction in the decades since, morally, the government of a conqueror, as Locke would say, has no obligation upon them. We would miss them if they left, though. The Pacific territories host military installations that enable our Union to defend itself far from mainland shores. Pearl Harbor and the bloody island hopping campaign that followed taught our country to appreciate the strategic importance of Guam and the Northern Marianas. Once again, this is just not right. Pearl Harbor and the island hopping campaign didn't teach our country to appreciate the strategic importance of Guam. What taught our country the strategic importance of Guam and the Marianas was the fact that you could fly B-29 bombers from here and drop bombs on Japan. That was the strategic importance, and that's what we learned, and that's something we haven't forgotten, that Guam and the Northern Marianas are good staging areas for military operations in East Asia. Well, I wonder where this guy went to school. He seems to get almost everything wrong here. Obviously not a part of the international radio listening audience. Okay, the Caribbean territories are home to DEA and Coast Guard facilities on the front line against smuggling and drug trafficking. I think one of the Caribbean territories, Puerto Rico, is not the front line against smuggling and drug trafficking. I think it is the front line of smuggling and drug trafficking. The territories, in turn, benefit from being part of the United States. They are protected from foreign aggression by the U.S. military and receive public services from federal agencies. But they would benefit more if they had voting representation. Well, maybe, maybe not. Because, you know, the reason, I've gone into this before, that your civil rights are basically a function of national citizenship. Your political rights are a function of state citizenship. If Guam were a state, it would lose a lot of the benefits that it has right now. But anyhow, let me go on with this. They would benefit more if they had voting representation. Federal agencies and the military would become more responsive to their needs. They would receive a larger share of federal spending, not based on what we kick in, because we don't kick in anything. And federal laws would take greater account of their interests. Puerto Rico's experience with Hurricane Maria and its debt crisis starkly exposed the pitfalls of being sidelined in the capital. In 1775, Edmund Burke, hoping to avert the coming break between America and Britain, urged his colleagues in Parliament to, quote, to admit the people of our colonies into an interest in the British Constitution. The U.S. Constitution is built on representative government, and so the way to admit territories into an enduring interest in it is clear. It's clear. Allow them to vote in Congress. How do you do that? How do you allow people living in the territories to vote in Congress? I wonder how much this guy gets paid for writing this stuff. Okay, so let's take a short break here.
Woo-wee! Just take a gander at them tender and juicy fall-off-the-bone St. Louis ribs. Heavens to Betsy! What is their secret? It's bursting with so much flavor, I can eat that all day long. Come see for yourself, y'all. These fine slabs of hunky-dory, mouth-watering ribs are only available at Circle K. Circle K. Take it easy.
at the mall as you enjoy shopping, dining, or entertainment. You could also win 3 great cars from Atkins Kroll and thousands of prizes in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game. Present your mall receipts and have a chance to win the 3rd car, the head-turning Lexus ES350 Luxury. Getaways to Manila, courtesy of Philippine Airlines. Plus, prizes from Foot Locker and Burger King. Virtual drawing date 10 a.m. August 22nd. Watch live on Micronesia Mall Facebook. Play and win in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. They're open in Nagotnya, ready for dine-in, takeout, and delivery services from Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Call them now, 479-2652, and get your Mezcla fix today.
Okay, so, you know, there are an abundance of people who want to tell the same story, you know, that Guam and the other territories aren't able to vote in Congress, and all of the other angles, or many of the angles related to our particular status, and then with an outburst of self-righteousness say, people in the territories ought to be able to vote. But no one takes the time to examine the United States Constitution and what would be required in order to provide a vote for any of the territories. In the case of Guam, Guam would have to become a state. And in order to become a state, the process is pretty simple. Our representative would introduce an enabling act in Congress. And if the act passed, then Guam would be sent a note, put together a constitution, and if we like your constitution, send it back. And if Congress likes the constitution that we enact, our proposed state constitution, then Congress enacts a bill admitting Guam just like any other bill, and that's it. The chances of that happening are not even somewhere down around slim to none, for reasons I've already explained. There just aren't enough people here to constitute a state. Now, there's a bitter reality that has to be faced here that I keep talking about, but this is how it works. Statehood is a practical impossibility. In order for Guam to ever have enough people to get up to the threshold that would put it on a par with even the smallest states like Wyoming, the island would become so crowded as to be unlivable. Can you imagine 600,000 people living on the island of Guam?
That'd be pretty shoulder to shoulder, sir.
It really would. It's, even at 160,000, it's kind of crowded sometimes. So that just isn't going to happen. And that's the only way that Guam would have representation in the United States Congress, would be if it became a state. Congress can't pass a law that says Guam shall have 2 representatives, and 1 representative in Congress and 2 senators. It just doesn't work that way. The Constitution would have to be amended. So Guam is not going to become a state. The idea of free association worked in other places, but it won't work here because the United States isn't going to be able to enter into an agreement with something that it already owns, the territory of Guam. Guam would have to become independent before it could freely associate with the United States. In other words, independence. So take that off the table. So that leaves independence and statehood. I mean, statehood, which is impossible, which leaves just independence. And I always characterize this as a game of heads I win, tails you lose. It's kind of like if I said to the real Joe Cruz, let's go down to McDonald's. I'm going to buy you a really good dinner, real Joe Cruz. I'm going to give you, you can choose from any one of these three. A T-bone steak with, a T-bone steak with all the trimmings. This is McDonald's now. A T-bone steak with all the trimmings. Lobster and oysters on the half shell.
Ooh, wow.
Or a Big Mac and fries.
I'll take a Big Mac and fries.
See, it's the only one you can get at McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
So when we have free association, statehood, and independence, independence is the Big Mac and fries. It's the only one we can get. Congress clearly has the ability to grant the island of Guam independence, but that's the only one that we could get. In 1946, the former territory, or actually the common, what it was really a territory of the Philippines, became independent. So when you hear all of this talk, Chamorro, self-determination, we just want to be able to make the choice. Any one of the three would, no, that's not what it's about. What it's about is a group of people that are known as separatists who want Guam to separate from the United States and become an independent country. And they go through this charade of self-determination, three choices, etc., so they can do all of their propagandizing with government of Guam money, with my money and your money. But when you come down to it, that's the only choice, is independence. So if you want to have, if you're out there on Guam and you want to have some of these things that the separatists think are so important, then your only option is independence. If you agree with me that you don't want to live in independent Guam, that you want to remain part of the American family, then this whole self-determination thing is not for you, because it's not self-determination. It's a hoax. Okay, we're coming up to that big halftime show here, so I'll come back to an independent Guam right after the halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A federal surge. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News, of law enforcement agents into Chicago to work with local police trying to stop violent crime.
When you're losing many people a weekend, many people, you see the same numbers as I do. When you're losing these people, they should call us and they should say, come on in. And it's incredible to me, but they're not doing it.
Chicago's Mayor Lori Lightfoot less than receptive.
There are meaningful ways that the president could actually help. Instead, it's denigrate, divide, and disparage.
Under Operation Legend, as it's called, federal marshals will arrest fugitives wanted on existing warrants, and the DEA will target violent drug gangs. The president says Albuquerque will be surged next, with other cities to follow. The administration announcing it's ordering millions of doses of a promising coronavirus vaccine.
There are meaningful ways.
The federal government has announced an agreement with Connecticut-based pharmaceutical company Pfizer to secure 100 million doses of an experimental vaccine. Here's Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont.
Pfizer is one of the lead horses in this race right now. There may be several winners. We need several winners.
Being developed under Operation Warp Speed, Lamont says doses could be available for domestic use as early as October if a large Phase 3 clinical trial convinces regulators the vaccine is safe and effective.
Fox's Jonathan Sari at a virtual town hall meeting, presumptive Democrat presidential nominee Joe Biden calling President Trump the country's first racist president. At the White House, President Trump telling reporters his actions suggest otherwise.
We passed criminal justice reform, something that Obama and Biden were unable to do. We did Opportunity Cities. We did the greatest. If you look at what we've done with Opportunity Zones, nobody's ever even thought of a plan like that.
America is listening to Fox News.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Woo, woo, wee! Just take a gander at them tender and juicy fall-off-the-bone St. Louis ribs. Heavens to Betsy! What is their secret? It's bursting with so much flavor, I can eat them all day long. Come see for yourself, y'all. These fine slabs of hunky-dory, mouth-watering ribs are only available at Circle K. Circle K. Take it easy.
Hospital restrictions and worries about infection leading more expectant mothers to deliver the way their great-grandmothers did.
Dr. Sarita Bennett, president of the Midwives Alliance of North America, says many people are considering out-of-hospital births.
Some of the hospital policies that people find restrictive are pushing people who were already considering it into making that choice, as well as there have been some families that really just are choosing it more as a way to escape hospital possible exposure to COVID.
And it's not just the coronavirus. Bennett says home birthing reduces the chance of exposure to antibiotic-resistant bacteria like MRSA and other types of superbugs. Gary Baumgarten, Fox News.
Witnesses say a government airstrike has killed at least 14 people in Afghanistan's western Herat province, many of them reported to be women and children. Hundreds of people had gathered there to welcome home a former Taliban fighter who'd been freed from jail when the airstrike hit. After an up day on Wall Street Wednesday, saw the Dow gain 165 points. Asian stock markets are closing Thursday mixed. Dow futures are trading about 60 points higher. On the cusp of the shortest season, a big contract signing in Major League Baseball.
The LA Dodgers Wednesday confirming they've signed outfielder Mookie Betts to a 12-year extension valued at $365 million. The Dodgers acquired Betts from the Boston Red Sox in a blockbuster trade in February, giving up outfielder Alex Verdugo and shortstop prospect Jeter Downs with a guarantee of only 1 year and the hope that Betts would consider re-signing before hitting the open market this winter. With this upcoming 2020 season, Betts will make another $27 million from the Dodgers. The slugger now holds the second largest contract in MLB history, trailing only LA Angels star Mike Trout. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
At the mall, as you enjoy shopping, dining, or entertainment, you could also win 3 great cars from Atkins Kroll and thousands of prizes in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game. Present your mall receipts and have a chance to win the 3rd car, the head-turning Lexus ES350 Luxury. Getaways to Manila, courtesy of Philippine Airlines. Plus, prizes from Foot Locker and Burger King. Virtual drawing date 10 a.m. August 22nd. Watch live on Micronesia Mall Facebook. Play and win in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his Smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his Smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña is taking your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair. Mezcla is ready to serve you and your family for your dine-in experience and takeout services. To ensure everyone's safety and comfort, Team Mezcla has taken further steps in maintaining a clean and sanitized area for you and your family while dining in. For more information, please call 479-2652 or 479-2653. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are, after enjoying that big halftime show that the Real Joe Cruz and I enjoy so much every day. I wrapped up the first half talking about Guam representation in Congress, statehood, and independence. And in short, it's a practical impossibility that Guam will ever become a state. In order to do that, today we'd need to have about 700,000 people. And I would present to you that having 700,000 people living on this island would make the island unlivable. But that's roughly the ratio of people in a state to a congressman. So none of the states would be too happy to see a new state where 160,000 people had a congressman and 2 senators. So it's just not going to happen. I've explained many times why free association is a will of the wisp. It can't happen. That leaves only independence, which is possible. It's something that the United States Congress could do tomorrow if it felt like. And it might satisfy some of the separatists, because then Guam would not be troubled by these little niceties like the Bill of Rights. So we wouldn't have to worry about things that votes that only Chamorros could participate in. That would be okay if in an independent Guam. And I've often posited that if we had an independent Guam, since none of the separatists tell us what an independent Guam would look like, just it would really be great. It would really be nice. I can envision a democratic socialist republic of Guahan that would be government of Chamorros, by Chamorros, for Chamorros. Would have to have some special provisions for those who would dwell on the island even though they're not Chamorros. And I made some references to the Pieds Noirs in French Algeria after Algeria became independent. And what happened to the Pieds Noirs thereafter, it wasn't pretty. And that's almost nearly always the case in the post-World War II decolonization process, where former colonies became independent. And what it meant usually was a mass exodus of large numbers of people, oftentimes to the detriment of the former colony. I'll give you southern Rhodesia, for example, today's Zimbabwe, which is what President Donald Trump would refer to as a shucks hole or something close to that. So I don't look forward to an independent Guam. I think it would be awful. And looking out for my own self-interest, I would not want to see an independent Guam. However, it's about the only alternative available to the one that I favor, which means remaining in the American empire, in the American family, and doing our best to improve our lot within the American family. And I've mentioned some ways some improvements that could be made before. Independence, I don't think so. So I've got Shepard on the line here. Good afternoon, Shepard.
Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to you. I heard you talking about statehood, like a population requirement, 700 thou, and, in order to get the proper representation, I suppose is what you're getting at. And you said that can't happen. And I was thinking, Okinawa is not that much bigger than Guam, and I believe they got 4 million souls on that island. And there's other places that are smaller with population densities. Honolulu is smaller than Guam. They got 1 million there. But I have a feeling that what you were getting at was it may be our resources or something that would keep this island from being much more densely populated.
Yeah, that's part of it. And I think Okinawa I can't remember what the dimensions of Okinawa are, but of course Okinawa and Honolulu have the advantage of being closer to other land masses than Guam does.
That's true. I believe Okinawa, I think we're, about 300 square miles. Okinawa is a little more than 400 square miles. You know, nothing's exact, but as far as comparisons go, just the sheer number that live there is just eye-watering. When you, of course, looking at people per capita, I don't know how they measure it per mile or whatever. It could be done, but you know, it's a job just getting in and out of this place. I can see why we're not more populated, but theoretically, I think it could happen. Particularly if we became a state, a lot of people who didn't even know where Guam is would come live here and do business here.
Well, my point is that even if I were to assume that it's possible, and I'm not, it would take a long, long time to get there.
Yeah, that's something we're talking about. Things that are super hypothetical. Oh my goodness, would it ever take a long time? Anyways, I just thought I'd throw that into the mix. That on the population. Enjoy the show. You have a good afternoon, Bob.
Okay, thanks for calling, Shepard.
You bet.
Okinawa has a population of 1,457,000 people, and let me see if I can find the area. 463 square miles. Guam is 210, so it's about twice as large as Guam with, let's see, 10 times as many people. So, without being too scientific, I would challenge anyone to come up with a theory that would see Guam supporting or making a home for 700,000 people to take us up to the threshold of Wyoming's not quite that. Wyoming's a little smaller than that, but that's about the average. So the point I want to make is that statehood is pretty much out of the picture, if not absolutely out of the picture. Free association is a legal impossibility, and that leaves only two alternatives: independence, or where we are now, part of the American family. And I've mentioned some things that we could do to improve our situation in the American family. For instance, we ought to ask for a life tenure for our district court judge. Right now, our district court judge serves a 10-year term, is appointed by the president, confirmed by the legislature. So the theory behind life tenure is that judges tend to be independent if they don't have to worry about reappointment. There would be no scuttlebutt around that, the judge is close to being reappointed, probably wants to stay on the good side of the Justice Department. This might not be a really good time to bring suit against the United States. That's just, some of the considerations involved. We could ask Congress to, instead of having a non-voting delegate, to have a resident commissioner like Puerto Rico has. Our representation in the Capitol, someone who would be elected for a 4-year term. We could perhaps build on that resident commissioner to provide us greater presence in the national capital, which would certainly be desirable. And of course, that's the advantage that the state has. It has at least 3 people in Washington to answer phones from the folks back home and try to make things happen. It's a little more difficult for us because we only have 1, and he doesn't have the same clout as other reps. But I've heard Robert Underwood say that being effective in Congress, he says not having a vote is a slight handicap, but it didn't stop him from accomplishing things. He said the key in the United States Congress is building the right kinds of relationships and working with people to get things done. So the point I want to make here, when I'm dealing with geniuses like Thomas Kreis, Neil Weir, and John Caves, who all say, oh yeah, this is so unfair. Guam doesn't have representation in Congress. You know, we go back and look at John Locke and the Declaration of Independence and the Founding Fathers and American ideals and everything. They should have representation in Congress. And my response is, okay, I agree. Guam should have representation in Congress. Show me your blueprint. And I've used the analogy, it's like saying, I brought a new Ford 150 yesterday, but I'm really disappointed in my Ford 150 because I have to put gasoline in it. If I fill the tank with water, it won't run. And the reason it won't run, because it's not designed to run on water or kerosene or diesel fuel. It's designed to run on gasoline. So our country is designed, made up of states, and that's where the political power resides, in the states. And this is all part of a constitution, the legendary checks and balances. Constitution can be changed, but it's really, really hard. So although we can't change the Constitution that easily, perhaps we could change our Joes. So instead of the real Joe Cruz, I'm going to talk to another Joe for the moment.
Again, so I was listening to what you were saying, and although I know you said before you don't like the concept of devil's advocate, it seems as though you're playing devil's advocate there with the options or non-options rather of statehood, free association, or
independence.
Independence, which preferably we wouldn't have to have. The reason he gave for statehood was possibly not large enough of a population.
For one reason, yeah.
And of course, you don't like the idea of status quo. They want to see some sort of change occur. I think a big way to see a change occur is to have increased participation. That might be the start. If you have increased participation, then maybe you can have an inkling or an idea of what sort of change that the people want to make to the political system.
Well, no, you see, we come right back there. We cannot change the political system. You look at the United States Constitution. We cannot change the political system. And the kind of input we have is not dependent upon the governing documents that we're up against. It's a people matter. If we're not getting enough representation, it's because we're not hollering loud enough, or we're not making enough phone calls, or something like that. And by the way, on the subject of the devil's advocate, another Joe, as part of my duties as the host of Tall Tales, I owe it to my international radio listening audience to explain things in such a clear and vivid manner that there can be no misunderstanding. And in order to do that, I have to explore all sides of an issue. But I'm not going to tip my hat to Satan in the process. You know, we don't need to bring the devil into any conversation whatsoever, even as the so-called devil's advocate. So we don't do the devil's advocate here. We don't give the benefit of the doubt. We don't agree to disagree. We don't credit something that someone says more highly because he says, "Well, that's my opinion." These are some of the rules of engagement here on Tall Tales. You can say whatever you want to another Joe. Just don't expect me to get real happy about the phrase devil's advocate.
I apologize, Uncle Bob. Thanks for clarifying that. And the other thing you said was you don't tip the hat, you say?
Say again?
I'm not sure if I heard you right. You don't tip your hat?
I don't tip my hat to the devil, you know. The devil is not welcome here.
In other words, you don't strengthen any particular position.
Well, I do. Yeah, I always do. And that's the other day when on the card I had Zemi Ikotny versus Meet the Press. So I went head to head with Meet the Press, and I said Zemi Ikotny is so much better than Meet the Press.
Because it's of course it's your.
Well, of course, the host makes a big difference. But I had an article criticizing Chuck Todd, the host of Meet the Press, who tries really hard to make it look like, oh, I'm really objective and I'm really fair and I bring out both sides, and he doesn't. You know, he's so pro-left and so biased. So this is just an act. And I said that's the difference between Meet the Press and Zemi Ikotny. I don't sit here and tell you, oh, I'm going to be really fair here, and I'm going to give both sides. You know, I'm going to air out both sides, and my opinion won't weigh into this. No, on Zemi Ikotny, you listen to Zemi Ikotny, you know that's not how it works. You get a huge dose of the host of Tall Tales in Zemi Ikotny, but I don't pretend that I'm being objective.
There you go. We're reminded that this is your program, and even Ray says the opinions or his program is there for his amusement for the most part. His positions he takes, but for you it's not amusement. It's your perspective most definitely. But I was curious about would the U.S. ever adapt towards like the British? They have the Commonwealth of nations. Is that what they call the British Commonwealth?
That's right.
But there's nothing in the cards in the future similar to that for the U.S. than in their territories, and possibly.
No, there isn't without an amendment to the Constitution. But you remember the British started out with the so-called British Empire. And I remember when I was in third grade, we had this big map on the wall, and all of the countries in the British Empire were in red. And obviously they were all over the world. And our teacher said, remember, boys and girls, the sun never sets on the British Empire.
All the hemispheres.
Yeah, and that was something that we had to learn in third grade. The sun never sets on the British Empire. Well,
it has to be an amendment.
When the wave of decolonization came along, a lot of the British colonies became independent countries, but they were members of this voluntary association called the British Commonwealth. Now, most of them, I think all of them, recognize the Queen of England or the King of England as their sovereign, but they were part of this voluntary association. And I can't see the United States ever being a party to something like that. But what we do have, if you look at it, you know, if you scrape the paint and varnish off of it, the United States is an imperial country. We live in part of the American Empire. And for my money, the American Empire is the greatest empire the world has ever seen or ever will see. And people who live in that empire are far better off than most of the rest of the people of the world. So I want to continue to live in the American Empire, and I'm not dissatisfied with the way things work right now. I think they could be made better. So I think it's our job to stay in the American Empire and try to improve our situation in the American Empire. Resident commissioner, life tenure for the judge, and the rest comes down to our effectiveness in the lawmaking process.
Yes. Yeah, we have to figure out how to do much better of that with this 36 legislature. And what about what is it, Switzerland? Do they have cantons?
Say again?
There's some country in Europe with they call them cantons, C-A-N-T-O-N. Is it Switzerland?
Switzerland has 22 cantons.
Like a direct democracy?
Switzerland is a democracy, and the cantons are the functional equivalent of states in the United States.
And it's a small country with 22 of them.
Yeah. No, I would. We have a listener here that could tell us everything we ever wanted to know about Switzerland. And he may call later on. Frenchie could tell us everything about Switzerland, which is a pretty admirable country. It's a small mountainous country, but it's been extremely prosperous over the years.
Well, in that case, Uncle Bob, I better defer to your other listeners and just listen to the program and hope some of them call up, as you say, and add to the program. Thanks for your time, Uncle Bob. Appreciate it.
Okay, another Joe. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And let's see, I got a break coming up, and I got Frenchie on the line. All right.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumon, or call 646-1463.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties, doing real estate on Guam since 1978. That's 14 years. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Well, here we are, Wrigley Field, Chicago, seventh inning stretch, and we go from Chicago straight to Catalonia. And our old friend Frenchie. Good afternoon, Frenchie.
Good afternoon, Judge. How are you? You're looking pretty swell today.
Thank you very much, Frenchie.
Yeah, nice shirt. I couldn't wear those horizontal stripe. It would make me look bigger. But since you're thin, that works out very well on you.
Cool.
So, yeah, Switzerland, interesting place. I spent almost 4 years there. It's not a federation of states, it's a confederation. There's a slight difference. They have four different official language. They have French, German, Italian, and a very antiquated language called Romanche, which is a mix of Swiss, German, and Latin. But and each state has a different constitution. So you have states where women cannot vote, others where they can. It's very different. It's an interesting country, and as you point out, they have survived and thrive in sometimes very dangerous environment, like during the 2 world wars and things. It's a very nationalist country. They are very proud of their country, and they're ready to defend it. Yeah, interesting. They all have atomic bomb shelter in every house. Anyway, the reason I was calling was some things that have been happening around us a little bit, but the media really doesn't talk about it, as always. Which is the attacks on Catholic Church in the U.S., which sadly enough are following a pattern that has been going on now for 5 years in Europe. And And it's all tied up to the fact that BLM, the Black Lives Matter, which is in many ways more of a fundraising organization and kind of a rallying cry, but it has close ties with Antifa, with the Socialist Party of America, and some strong, very leftist, Maoist, actually, parties like the New African Black Panthers, the Progressive Labor Party, and I'll come back on this party because it has a tie to Guam, and the Revolutionary Communist Party, who are all Maoist party with backing, financial backing from China. So it's very interesting. The Progressive Labor Party, the reason there is a tie to Guam is that it is a sister party with a group that I've talked about several times, which is the International Network, Women's Network Against Militarism, which Senator Perez is an active member. And they also have Women for Genuine Security, which is basically a leftist anti-American base in the Pacific, which, what's his name, Zorzan mentioned last time you had him on the show, which are groups that are anti-militarist, but only when it comes to American military installation, not other countries like North Korea, China, or others. So they are definitely have an agenda. And they also tied up to the Worker Student Alliance, the Students for Democratic Society, which trace back to the Vietnam War, anti-war movement, and again, the anti-U.S. military. But one thing they all have in common is they have very profoundly anti-Christian and specifically anti-Catholic. Why is that? Is because, of course, the Catholic Church is universal and apostolic, right? So this is something that to them is a big red flag, literally and figuratively. And they are, according to them, the Catholic Church is the embodiment of the extreme expression of white supremacy. Now, how do they go from there to here? I have no clue, but this is what they express. And one of the BLM leaders recently said that Jesus was an embodiment of white supremacy, that we should destroy statues and so on. And, not even weeks, but just days later, you had a multiplication of anti-Catholic vandalism in the U.S., mostly on the East Coast, but also on the West Coast, with the desecration of statues of Mary, of Jesus, the painting on walls of churches, and burning down of a church in Georgia, and also in California, the destruction of one of the 9 original missions that were installed by Junipero Serra, or Saint Junipero Serra, and of course the desecration of his statue in the Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. And there are two things in those things. There is a real strong voluntary idea to get rid of the Catholic Church, and also a how would you say that properly? A lack of response from both the Catholic Bishops Association, the Catholics in France, in Great Britain, in Germany, where a lot of those acts. France, for example, last year had almost 1,800 desecration of church, from tagging all the way to burning down of churches. Last Friday, they burned down the St. Peter and St. Paul Cathedral in Nantes, which is the southern Brittany part of France, and destroy a 16th century organ and several Spanish masterpiece painting that were hanging there that were given by the King of Spain in the 17th century. So there is definitely a will to eradicate the history of the church, and the bishops, the cardinals, and the Pope have been really silent against this expression of real evil. And what's fascinating is that here on Guam, while the pro-independence movement is very careful not to hurt Catholics, with obvious reason, because Guam is still a very Catholic island, they kind of hide their anti-Catholicism. And, you know, nobody has ever confronted Senator Perez and asking her why she belongs to those far left movement and why she's only worried about the spiritual value of ancestral land behind the fence and not in the south of the island, where all those artifacts are surrounded by mountains of garbage and nobody does anything about it, but only about what's inside. It's because it's part of their plan. It's part of their modus operandi, like they did in Okinawa. They go after the environment, they go after historical artifacts, they go after keeping the traditions of the indigenous people, and all those are just push-button issues that have only one goal, which is getting rid of military presence on the place. And this is exactly what the pro-independence people are doing. And they even went, 2 weeks ago, Bevacqua even went as far as doing an article praising Santa Maria Camalan as a symbol of the struggle of the Chamorro people, and trying to confiscate the image of Santa Maria Camalan as a pro-independence figure, which is amazing since it was a Spanish saint. And they're also pushing in their speech, and it's very insidious. They're pushing in their speech things that, you know, the belief of ancestral spirits, that there is good and bad spirits, but most of the Chamorro spirits are good, except when they go after white people. And ancestral lands are automatically holy ground, so they give it a religious value, and at the same time, they drop from time to time the notion that Catholicism is the religion of the colonizer, right? So it's insidious, it's not direct, but it's kind of the thousand-cut approach that the Chinese are very good at. And since those people actually are the useful idiots for the Chinese Communist Party, they are doing their work. And I won't be surprised at all if sooner than later you will see anti-Catholic movements suddenly sprouting out and under the guise of fighting colonialism. And they were eerily silent, for example, when that traditional healer who is representing the ancient spirits and everything, who was accused of rape at the port of Guam, there was total silence from the independent people. They didn't say anything. They didn't say they condemn this, and they won't let anything like that stand within their ranks. And it is one of their biggest pusher of the traditional beliefs and everything. And he pretends that he can heal people with the ancient ways and the ancient spirits, which is basically black magic. You know, there is no other way to call it. It's black magic. It's very anti-Catholic, and that's what they do. So there is a dichotomy there that they are aware that they cannot push it too fast on Guam as they would on the mainland or in Europe, but it is coming. And if people are not careful and confront those people, like what happened in St. Louis, for example, 3 weeks ago, the Black Lives Matter, one of their leaders, wanted to ally himself with an atheist Jew who wanted to destroy the statue of St. Louis in Missouri and also rename the city. And it was one single priest and a few little ladies like we had at the cathedral under Aperon that confronted the rioters and basically pushed them back with their rosary. But the bishops were continuing to be silent. The only two bishops in the U.S. that I've seen that raise hell was the bishop in Florida that is pushing the FBI to process this crime against the desecration of the Jesus statues in Florida and the attempted arson of his church as a hate crime, and which would make our woke senator very happy. The other one was the Archbishop of San Francisco, who decided to hold an exorcism in front of TV cameras in the Golden Gate Park, where people had torn down San Junipero's Terrace statue, and it was quite amazing. So, and of course they went after him as being a pusher of old beliefs and so on and so forth. So this was my reflection for today. I know I took a lot of time, but I thank you for giving me the opportunity. I don't know if you have any comments on that. But
Well, I'd say it was time well spent, Frenchie, and I have wondered myself how long it would take the separatists to turn on the church, because ideologically they cannot exist together.
No, they can't. But right now they are playing a high wire number where they're trying to pretend that they are not anti-Catholic, but that at the same time playing both sides of the coin. But I know it's coming, and that's probably will be their downfall. But unless, of course, there is a continuous silence from our church leaders. We're so far on Guam, with the Archbishop not being present right now and still recovering from his thing, you don't have many leaders showing up. They are kind of oblivious by their silence.
True enough, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
but it's at the same time, it's encouraging to see that a few little old ladies, like on Guam in front of the cathedral, and one young priest that was not scared and really believed in what he wanted, was able to turn a crowd that was 10 times their size by being steadfast and continuing praying the rosary. It was quite amazing.
That's what we need more of, Frenchie. Thanks for the call, and you've contributed a lot. Thank you very much.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, so it looks like it's time for the home stretch, Real Joe Cruz.
Woo-wee! Just take a gander at them tender and juicy fall-off-the-bone St. Louis ribs. Heavens to Betsy! What is their secret? It's bursting with so much flavor, I can eat that all day long. Come see for yourself, y'all. These fine slabs of hunky-dory, mouth-watering ribs are only available at Circle K. Circle K. Take it easy.
If you've ever struggled for breath, you know what a scary experience it is. Whether you have asthma, emphysema, COPD, lung cancer, or another respiratory illness, the right medical treatment makes all the difference. GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic has the latest technology and respiratory equipment, staffed by world-class pulmonologists. Make an appointment today with GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic and start breathing easier. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Okay, here we are on the home stretch, and as usual, Frenchie contributed dramatically to the cerebral quality of Tall Tales, laying things out for us in such a clear manner and in such a realistic manner, causing me to wonder how it is that so many people can watch things happen right before their eyes and be kind of oblivious to what's going on. And the best example I can think of is Black Lives Matter, which has used the unfortunate death of George Floyd as a pretext to turn the United States upside down, to start something that looks an awful lot like a revolution. And we have useful idiots here on the island that have bought into it. And I'm talking about the what is it, the doctors, what did they call themselves? The
White coats.
White coats for Black Lives, yeah, down at Skinner Plaza, down there kneeling and virtue signaling and hoping that they would get their pictures in the paper when they're supporting something that looks like it's trying to be the ruination of our country as we know it. And then, of course, we have the separatist phenomenon here on the island, which isn't quite as visible. It's just about as loud, but not quite as visible. And if you understand the separatist rhetoric on things, it cannot be consistent with Catholicism, which was brought here by guess who? And his name's, and the name starts with a C, and I don't mean Christ. I mean the colonizer. The colonizer brought Catholicism to Guam, etc. So the whole shtick of the separatist is inconsistent with that, and Frenchie mentioned it, and I just wondered myself, sort of silently, how long it would be before the separatists turned on the Catholic Church. And I have a feeling we won't have to wait too long before we find out. Just one thing, one other thing for, and I've got a poster here who says, Judge Bob, that was a blue star material. Well done, Frenchie. And I agree. Indeed, it's blue star material. Can you put a blue star on Frenchie's post on Facebook, Real Joe Cruz?
I couldn't do that, sir. I'm not authorized to get blue stars.
It didn't stop you the last time.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, well, if you can, please do, because Frenchie certainly rated one. Just one more thing on Switzerland. It is a relatively small, very mountainous country, very prosperous, showing that those folks really made the most out of their terrain. And Switzerland is a neutral country. It hasn't participated in any of Europe's wars since, I know Frenchie could tell you exactly when, probably 1812. And one of the reasons that it's neutral is that I don't think anybody wants to tangle with it. All of the mountain passes leading into Switzerland are booby-trapped so that the Swiss could blow those mountain passes up with a flick of a switch. And something else about Switzerland, Switzerland doesn't have an army. Switzerland is an army. If you were to ride a train in Zurich, out of Zurich, you would see a soldier in uniform carrying his automatic weapon with him on the train, going home on leave or coming back to active duty or something like that. Not an uncommon sight to see soldiers in uniform in public carrying their military weapons. Talk about the Second Amendment, huh? A very interesting place. Here's a post that just popped us. If this is the case, then whoever is running against Underwood, they should call him out on this. I'd like to see that confrontation. Well, you know, that's the thing about Underwood. Underwood has made no bones about leading the separatist movement for, 40 years or something like that? And I don't know how well we'll be served by having a separatist representing us in Congress. I've got some other stuff, but I won't get into it today. I'll probably get into it tomorrow a little bit more. I'm kind of, I guess I'm hung up a little bit on this separatism and political status shtick because there's so much misinformation floating around out there. And of course, misinformation not countered by real information tends to take on a life of its own. So I've just got I've got about 8 more minutes to go. And I got another item here on the card that I can probably use to polish off that 8 minutes. This is called Tello versus Ray Topaznia, back to the legislature. And it says, ethics complaint filed against senator. Ray Topaznia has filed an ethics complaint against Tello over statements made during a confirmation hearing in May. The complaint made to Senators Joe San Augustine and William Castro, the chairman and vice chairman of the Ethics Committee, respectively, states that Taitigui made defamatory remarks about his character. In response, Taitigui said the timing of the complaint demonstrates that it's, quote, purely political. Quote, aside from the fact that the committee chairperson and other participants in the hearing did not raise issues with my questions and comments, there is absolutely nothing wrong with me advising a nominee to an agency, board, or commission that by stepping up to the plate, now here's an interesting choice of words, Real Joe Cruz, by stepping up to the plate, he or she should be prepared. Now, what does that mean, he or she?
I don't know. They should have said they, sir.
Is that what he or she means? They?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
Okay, yeah, all right. That when, let's see, advising a nominee to a board that by stepping up to the plate, they should be prepared for the good, the ugly, and everything in between should they be confirmed by the legislature. Taitigui said. She also apologized that, quote, an honest question, close quote, would make Topaznia feel attacked and uncomfortable. It sounds like we're back on a campus in the mainland, you know, triggering and safe places, safe spaces, and comfort zones. And she apologized that an honest question would make Topaznia feel attacked and uncomfortable, but she would not let the complaint nor any other politically motivated effort to silence her get in the way of her work. Topaznia responded directly to Taitigui, called the apology disingenuous, and noted that most candidates would cry political attack during an election year. So I got to remember that. If anybody says, you know, I don't care much for that program, Tall Tales, I think the host of Tall Tales goes into stuff he needn't go into. What do I say, Real Joe Cruz? Political attack. Right? Moreover, the complaint is dated June 19, about 1 month after the incident, and not 2 months after, as Taitigui stated in her press. Oh, okay, so Taitigui says about 2 months late, and Topaznia comes back and says, no, it's only 1 month late. Well, late is late. It would have been sooner, but I could not find standard operating procedures or a form for filing an ethics complaint on the Guam legislature website. I did complete one ethics complaint, but before I could turn it in, my dog ate it.
You just made that one up, sir.
Topaznia also stated that the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority board appointee central to the hearing later shared with him that she thought Taitigui's questions were inappropriate and she felt intimidated. Wow. I guess we need to develop some new signage at the front door of the legislature. Something along the lines of snowflakes, be careful. Going on, Topaznia says defamatory statements made at hearings could discourage future public testimony or discourage individuals from accepting appointments by the governor to any board, Topaznia said. Well, defamatory statements. Okay? Here, you got a Law and Order notebook there, Real Joe Cruz. The truth is a complete defense to libel and slander. So if what you're saying is true, it ain't libel. Okay, the hearing took place on May 19. Gura Board nominee Anisha D'Elia was taking questions from lawmakers. Taitigui asked D'Elia if D'Elia was aware that Topaznia had sued the Gura Board, to which D'Elia responded, she was not. Quote, I'm saying this as a friend. I suggest you look into that, because if you do become a member of this board and you're going to be a part of that lawsuit, then you might rethink that. I hope that you do read up what has been going on at Gura in the last year and a half before you make this decision, Taitigui said during the hearing. I'll wrap this up tomorrow. It's kind of short, and it's perhaps, as Shakespeare would say, much ado over nothing. See you tomorrow.